It took me 3 minutes to get here. Piano Factory, I had no idea that this beautiful building existed. I've been here for 2 years and I just passed the building for pretty much every day. Oh, we cannot get in there. This is so cool. Wow. I had no idea that kind of thing could exist in Hell's Kitchen.
Blue morning glory up there.
Oh, the flower.
Every day I say thank you for that for Stephen. He loves blue.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. Making life all over again.
Yes. I got you cardamom sesame seed cake. I created it.
Oh, so we have this for dessert.
Because I was thinking that, like, you know what, she's gonna love cardamom and sesame seeds.
No. I think they would go well together.
Yeah. Okay.
So
good.
we have this for dessert.
Of course.
I have a lot of imagination being an artist. It's like one time I got my groceries delivered. I used to live in a brownstone on East 56th Street. Rent control, that's how I lived there for almost 15 years. But 4 long flights of stairs up. And after a while, I couldn't carry the groceries. Like every can of tomato juice, you have to think, oh, could I carry that with this and that? So this guy delivers it, and it was the 80s. And this kid, black kid with a big afro, standing outside the door. He got home faster because he had a bicycle. And he's got 3 bags of heavy groceries. And he's constantly moving like this. So he said, looking me over like this, is, you want me to carry the groceries in? And I thought, oh, I'm not opening the door while he's here. So I said, no, my husband will do it. I was alone. I didn't have any husband. He said, I rang the bell. He's not there. I said, oh, yes, he is. I know him. He sleeps all day while I go out and work. So the guy looks at me. I said, yeah, he's a bum. I said, I'll get him up. You go on. Here's your tip. And I watched him go down the stairs. Then I opened the door a little bit, and I'm looking to see if he's going down. And I said, Harry, you lazy bum. You're home sleeping all day while I'm working. The least you could do is carry in the groceries. And the guy says, ooh, what a bitch. It was so funny. But I thought I saved myself because he was going to hang around. He thought, oh, I'll get her in the,
Do you write anything?
journals.
No, not the fiction.
No.
You should write fiction. That was a good story.
Yeah. And then another story that I made up on the spot. I worked at Brunschwig Files. I was that famous French company that was over 100 years old. I was their design director, the most prestigious company in the world. I'll show you the journals later that I made because I illustrated journals. That's how I did my collections. And that's what I was famous for, that and my colors. So every Thursday night, it was all women in the studio, from the chief executive down to anybody. They said they wanted to go to the movies. Would I come to the movies? I said, I can't come. Because every Thursday night I went home and I cleaned my whole apartment. I must have been really totally full of energy then because I'd get home at 6. I would vacuum, dust, polish, everything ready. By 10 o'clock I would walk over to the brasserie and have a cheeseburger and a glass of red wine. And I had the energy to do that, and then I'd get up at 6 the next morning and I was fine. I mean, I would die now to do that. So they said, what do you mean your housekeeper's coming? I said, oh yes, Beulah. Now I wouldn't say that because it's very racist, but this was back in the early 80s. So they said, well, Beulah, you have a housekeeper that comes there? I said, yes. Well, why do you have to be there? Why can't you just let her be in there clean? I said, no, I can't leave her alone because her boyfriend Rufus comes with her and he starts playing boogie woogie on the piano and they dance, they sing, they don't get the work done. So I have to be there to supervise. So they said, wow, is she expensive? I said, no, she doesn't take much, but she does a lot of work. She irons, she washes the windows. Where did you get somebody this day and age that will do all that? I said, she does everything for me, but she has to be supervised, so I can't go to the movies with you. And then they'd always ask me about Beulah on Friday, every Friday. And I thought, even the receptionist at Brunschwig, because they were all waspy, wealthy family, I had nothing. I'm living on, what my salary, supporting my mother and my three sisters. I had never any extra money. I never thought of having a maid, but they all did. So they thought, oh, she's one of us then. But too bad she has one she has to supervise.
Were you born here?
In the Bronx.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your parents are from Greece?
My father,
Your father.
was born in Hoboken. His father came here before 1900 from Turkey. That's where they're from. I have a family tree going back 500 years. The reason the Greeks in the mainland don't have this, because they were in the mainland and they were allowed to be Greek Orthodox. In Turkey, the Greeks, and the Armenians too, I'm sure, had to go and register with the mayor of the town. They came from Izmir, which was called Smyrna then. And they lived there for 500 years, and every year they had to pay. It started out being almost nothing, but later on it became, I'm sure, a big amount of money to retain their Christianity. If they didn't come and register and pay the money and sign the paper, they were automatically Muslims. And they didn't want to do that. So my
I've got this
father came here. He was Greek and French. French because Admiral Lafayette, the head of,
Yes.
during the Revolutionary War here, he had a cousin who was the head of the French Navy. His name was Admiral Barrelier. Barrelier was sailing in the Aegean Sea in February. This had to be in the 1700s, the late 1700s. The Aegean has terrible storms. It's a very rough sea when the wind blows. They got shipwrecked off the island of Paros. He stayed on the boat until the very last, as he was the admiral, and then they were rescued by the Greeks on the island. They came and it was cold and stormy, so the Greeks all, as they do, well, they used to, I don't know if they still do, put them up. Every sailor that was alive that survived the storm got put up in a different house. So Barrelier sees the 14-year-old daughter of the man that owns the house he's staying in. She's beautiful, and immediately he thinks, that's the one I want for my wife. So he tells the father the next day, I'm a very wealthy man. I have a home in Marseille and a place in Paris. I want to marry your daughter. Father says, absolutely not. And he says, well, why not? I'm wealthy. I have all of this. I'm French, of course, being full of himself. He says, well, first of all, you're French, you're Catholic. We don't like Catholics. The Greek Orthodox and the Catholic Church since the schism. And then second of all, she's only 14. He said, I'll wait for her. How old does she have to be to marry? He said, 15. He said, so he said, I'll wait a year and I'll make you a promise. The first child we have will be brought up Greek Orthodox. The second one, Catholic. Third one, Greek Orthodox. Fourth one, Catholic. He married her a year later. They lived in Marseille. They had 12 children, 6 Greek Orthodox, 6 Catholic. So that's how the French got into that side of the family. That's my father's side. My interesting father, I'll tell you about too.
How do you know all that? Like how
It
what
carried
did you
through the
research?
family. They,
that story.
they told
Okay.
all of this.
Okay.
In fact, the Barrelier name is on the tree, on the family tree. My mother's father was born here. He was an interesting character, Thomas Francis McGuire. He was in Ringling Brothers Circus as an acrobat. His father came here in the 1850s during the Irish potato famine. And then he had a son. I know nothing of the wife. What happened to her? She probably died. My grandfather McGuire was first in the circus, and he was married to a woman whose brother was his partner. And it was like the old Ed Sullivan television programs. They had this act where there was a table and another smaller table and another one, then a chair. And the brother-in-law was sitting on the chair reading the New York Times, rocking back and forth, and all of a sudden he would flip over, do 2 somersaults, and land on the ground with the Times with the chair. Only one time, the last time, he landed with a broken neck. So my grandfather quit the circus. But apparently, somewhere along the way, probably in the circus, he learned to be a horseman. So he became a mounted policeman in Central Park. And in the early days of making Hollywood films, before they went to California, they made them in Central Park, like cowboy movies with Tom Mix. But the actors didn't know how to get under the horse and shoot the Indian, do all this stuff. So they would say to my grandfather, you on a horse, you know what to do. If we put you in a cowboy costume, could you do this? So he's in a lot of early movies
Wow.
as the cowboy shooting the Indians. And then they moved to Hollywood, but he stayed here. And eventually, I can show you. I think I showed to Stephen. My sister has the scrapbook, but I have copies. He became a famous detective because he was very psychic, very sensitive Pisces who collected copper and emeralds, all of which I don't have any of, but except one piece of copper. He was known to always find the jewel thief, and I guess during World War I, he was in the Marines, like Stephen, who was a Marine. And when he came home, he continued with the career and became this famous detective. The New York Times is always writing up about how brave he was. People had horses that would run away, and he'd chase after the horse and get the rider safe. And these wonderful write-ups, like these very wealthy people lived on Fifth Avenue would have engagement parties for the daughter. The ring always got stolen, but Detective Thomas McGuire always found it tied to the window sash, which I think is probably the rope that comes down in the curtains. So he must have been a character. I never knew him because he died in 1933, and I was born in 38. So, okay, my mother's side, Irish. That was her father. Her mother was the daughter of a Danish architect who came to this country, maybe 1870, I'm not sure, because he died when he was 32. He had a cerebral hemorrhage. But he married my great-grandmother, and they had two daughters, one of whom was my grandmother, Charlotte McGuire, who married Thomas McGuire. That family, before they married into the Danish family, were English. Their name was Fleming. The mother, that would be my great-great-grandmother of the grandmother I knew, the great-grandmother I knew, decided to convert to Catholicism in 1857 or 1860. She wrote to her family in England, I'm going to leave the Church of England and become a Catholic. They wrote back, no Catholics, don't want Catholics, you can't do that, you have to stay Protestant. No, she said, this is what I want to do. So they wrote back, if you do that, if you convert,
You're cut.
and that's what they did, so I know none of the English people. So that's why I know I'm English, Irish, Danish. Mother had red hair, blue eyes. I can show you her pictures.
Yes.
And beautiful peaches and cream skin. My father, blue-black hair, like some Africans and Middle Eastern people. Blue-black hair, dark, dark skin. And as a little girl, because my mother was very beautiful, bus driver went off his route following her home once. I was homely, skinny little thing. And people would say to me, without realizing the effect it had, your mother is so beautiful. You don't look anything like her, do you? And I'd look at my father, who had black hair and this dark complexion, and my mother, who was pale and blue-eyed and redheaded, and I'm thinking, I must be adopted. I got it in my head for sure I was adopted, and I drove my mother nuts. Tell me the truth, please tell me the truth. I was adopted, wasn't I? You don't want to tell me, but you can tell me. I need to know, I need to know. No, you weren't adopted. No, you won't tell me the truth. Please tell me the truth. And I nagged her and all the time, made her crazy. And one day she said to me, you're not adopted. I wish you were so I could send you back. You're driving me crazy.
Where did you grow up?
In the Bronx.
Bronx.
Until I was 15. My mother and father were divorced when I was 7, and my mother remarried when I was 9, a Sicilian-American man, younger than she, intellectually and culturally beneath her by millions of miles, a crude, nasty man who never forgave her or my sisters for being girls. He wanted a son, and my mother had, at the age of 40, one baby every year, always a girl. The second one was pretty. The first one not, but a soul of gold. She's beautiful within, it shines out. She's the one that was here till last week. But the middle one, born on Christmas morning, was very beautiful. And he called her daddy's girl. When she married him, I was 9, and 10 when she had my first little sister. And I remember thinking, I was a very advanced child. I was very sensitive. I knew she was going to marry him the minute she met him. He opened up a dry cleaner shop a block from where we lived, and we went in to leave off some things to be cleaned. And I saw the electricity between them. I saw the attraction, the sexual thing. I didn't know anything about sex, but a sensitive child picks this all up. We're walking a block home, and I looked at her, and I said, "You're going to marry that man, aren't you?" Wham, bam, in the face, really hard. She said, "How dare you say that to me? I'm married to your father." And I cried, but I knew something happened. Within a couple of weeks, he was invited home to dinner. My father was painting his portrait because my father was a painter. And maybe within 6 months or so, they were going for a divorce.
Wow.
I was 7 then, but I felt it all. That's right. By the time he moved out, it was a terrible year for me because we lived in the home of my grandaunt, who was lovely. And she was an old maid school teacher, had a car. She went to college. She did all these things. And her name was Amelia. Her father was the Danish man. She was the sister of my grandmother, whom I never met because she died again before I was born. But she was so good to my brother and me. She loved us and we loved her. And the only vacation of my childhood, she took me on for 2 weeks because she had a thing she did when my mother was a child. She took her to Asbury Park, New Jersey for 2 weeks. And my mother loved that. And then my mother grew up and eloped with my father when she was 18. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole story there, too, because when my grandmother married the Irish-American detective, her family cut her off. You can't marry Irish. It's like the worst thing you could do. Until my mother was born. And then they reconciled and accepted my mother. Then my mother, the day after she turns 18, runs away with my father to Elton, Maryland. They get married. Mm-hmm. They cut her off till 2 years later my brother was born. It's a stupid thing. I mean, the stupid prejudices, you can't marry this, you can't marry that.
Yes, punish your
people
child.
Are so into punishment.
Yeah, this is not your life.
No. Anyway, they made it up. So the brother was super intelligent. He had 188 IQ. And it made my life a misery because every time I went to school and be a new teacher, they'd see the name Samios, which is unusual. It means a man from the island of Samos in Greek. And they'd say, "Samios, do you know John Samios?" I'd say, "Yes, that's my brother." "Oh, well, we expect great things from you." And I think, no, I don't have this big brain. And if I just did one thing wrong and didn't get A+, "What's the matter with you? You got to talk to your brother." It's a terrible thing. I lived in that all the time. But anyway, so my mother remarries. She has these children. She's suicidal because the second marriage was a misery. And he was a really primitive, uncultivated. He came in and he said, "We listened to the classical music station. Why I know so much about music, not from school, but from listening, from the time I was a little baby." And he comes into the house, the stepfather, and he says, "No more funeral music." And he also wouldn't let me play the piano anymore. When he was home, I couldn't play. God. I didn't want to go to school anymore because I used to come home and find her in the kitchen with towels under the door and the gas on. Oh, I can't tell you how many times that happened. She kept this thing up.
Did they stay married the rest
for 22 years, and he was always unfaithful to her. And finally, they got a divorce.
Oh. Did you go to school after, like the college? Like, what did you know what you wanted to do?
I was kept out of school, public school, the first years. Then when my mother married this man, she put me in a Catholic school, which I hated. There were nuns. They were very strict. I didn't like the Catholic church on Sunday because there was no singing in those days. It was just Latin Mass. I didn't understand Latin. I wanted to go to a Protestant church or Sunday school and sing the little hymns and stuff. I remember one Sunday I didn't go to Mass. I think I went into the church and I thought, I'm not doing this. I was pretty independent myself. I'm going to the Dutch Reformed Church.
From Bronx, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
The Bronx girl.
Right, and a Leo too.
And a Leo, oh, okay.
So I go to the church and I have a good time and I sing hymns and I come out and there's a little boy standing across the way who's in my class in the Catholic school. Looks at me like this and he runs away. And I thought, uh-oh, there's going to be trouble. It was. Next morning, he goes to school early, goes to the principal, Sister Mary John. I'm sure she was this horrible gay woman that had her girlfriend that was Sister Mary Letitia. They walk like this. But nobody talked about anything like that in those days.
Yeah.
So he reported me. And she calls me into her office and she says, John Bernardino told me you went to the Protestant church on Sunday. I said, yes, I did. Why did you do that? I said, well, I came into the Mass and the priest was reciting everything in Latin. I didn't understand a thing. It didn't fill my heart. So I wanted to go where I'd understand. And I went up the street and she says, now you have to be a Catholic little girl, not a Protestant. Put your hands out. I said, please don't hit them. I play the piano. She said, well, you might not anymore. And she beat my knuckles till it was terrible. And what did that do?
Oh my
Make me
God.
never want to be there.
Yeah.
But there was one lovely nun who was the teacher. I got left back a year.
How can you
Because
treat somebody like that?
People do despicable things to each other. It's very sad. On my last birthday, I looked back about all the things I've experienced and looked at in my long life now. It was the first time I've ever done that. It took me 87 years to look backwards. And I thought, the most important thing is to be kind. And if you don't like somebody, just move sideways.
Yeah.
It makes you feel so good when things are nice and lovely. And you don't love everybody.
Yeah.
You meet people like I met you, and right away I thought, this is a person, why didn't I ever meet her before? Why didn't you introduce us before? But, and I knew immediately when I met Zach years
Same.
ago.
I had the same feeling. I
Yes.
was like, oh my God, I love her.
I know,
Yeah,
and I
I'm gonna
thought, now
come
you
back
live in the
here.
neighborhood, now
Yeah,
we're going to do things together.
absolutely. Yeah.
But it's not like that with a lot of people. And when you meet somebody and you don't feel good, as I did about my stepfather, only 7 years old, but I knew bad, you have to work with that, but not hate them and harm them. This is what I don't get about people.
Like, when did you decide to become designer?
I
Or
didn't.
like, did you?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I started to play the piano when I was 18 months old.
18 months old. Okay.
We went to visit my father's sister in Baltimore, Maryland, and I hadn't listening to music all the time. And strangely, I'll tell you a funny thing. For some reason, I never cried as a baby. They used to call me, my father called me Sunshine, because I'd jump around the house. First word I learned, sentence was rise and shine. I'd go in everybody's room and they'd say, leave me alone, I want to sleep. And I would, yeah, la, 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 la. So I was hated, especially by my brother. But so I'm 18 months old. We go down to this place, and the only musical experience that I can almost remember, because I have a couple of baby memories, going back to being in a baby carriage. I can remember the woolen blanket that was itchy, rough wool, and the colors of it that I hated. So there was an organ grinder. You know what they all got? They used to wind the thing with a monkey with a little hat. And he's in front of the house, and he's playing and playing. And I started to cry, and I never cried. So my mother goes out. This is 1939. And she gives him a quarter. That was a lot of money in 1939, 25 cents. And he doesn't understand. He's from Italy, and he doesn't speak much English. He thinks this means that she likes it. So he keeps playing. So she runs and gives him another quarter. He thinks, yeah, and he keeps playing. Well, 2 or 3 hours go by, and I'm sobbing, crying, and she's afraid I'm going to go into some kind of what do they call those little fits that babies can have where they can't breathe anymore? And I was like that. She gives him about $3. That's a lot of money in that time. And finally he goes away, and I stop crying.
She'd be like, basta, basta.
That's it. She should have said. Exactly. We didn't know that word. So she said, throughout my whole childhood, I never cried unless somebody played a harmonica, an accordion, or an organ. It must have been the sound about the air going through something. It frightened me. So I asked my mother what she thought that was about, and she said, I think you just had very good taste, because those aren't good instruments. There you are. Stephen has an accordion, and he hasn't played it for me yet. He's afraid I'll cry, maybe.
Yeah, let's not.
But anyway, so we go to Baltimore, and we walk into the living room, and they have a grand piano. We had an upright piano in the sun parlor of the house with ivory keys, whole thing from 1888. It said Ebsen piano, Ebsen Dobson piano, and it had the date on it, 1888. And I'd look at it, never touched it. So my cousin walks in. I'd never met him before. He's 12 years old, and he's a sea cadet in a uniform. And I love sailors for some reason. As a little kid, it's before World War II, but a lot of people are signing up for the Navy, and if you see them in the neighborhood, I'd run after them. I thought they were wonderful, handsome, terrific. I don't know what I was looking for. So he comes in, and his name is Richard Psaros, which means fish in Greek. And he and his father love to fish, so they have the right name. And he comes in, he says, one of these very aggressive, friendly guys, "Hi, Corinne," like this. I remember that, with this big smile. And I was taken by that, because everybody in our house was very restrained and refined. And he says, "You want to hear me play the piano?" And I said, "Mm-hmm." So he goes over and he plays Boogie Woogie. You know what that is?
Yes.
Like da-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I had never heard Boogie Woogie, and I'm transfixed. And the grand piano is white. So I said to my mother, because I talked early, "What a beautiful piano." She said, "No, it isn't. Only jazz musicians have white pianos. Classical musicians have ebony or wood. They would never have a white piano." So I was subdued, like, okay, I'm sorry I said that. But I thought he was just hot stuff. So 2 days later, we came home, and my mother is fixing dinner in the kitchen one day. It was a long, narrow house, and nobody locked the doors in 1939, 1940. It was safe everywhere. And she suddenly hears somebody playing Yankee Doodle. Bum, 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 bum. And she says, "Oh my God, somebody came in the house. I should have locked the door." So she gets the broom to hit them, and she goes through the hall and the dining room and the living room and goes into the sun parlor, and there I am, standing up on the floor, but playing like this. That's how I started, yes. By the time I was 2, I was already trying to play Chopin. By the time I was 4, not perfectly, because I couldn't hear all the voices and get it. I was playing Grieg's Piano Concerto that I loved, sitting on the stool and playing. I should have been put in a school.
Yes.
Like NYU had something they called the Seashore School for talented children, because it was a child prodigy.
Yes.
I got lost in the shuffle of the parents not happy, the
Yes.
divorce, the remarriage, the
Stepfather.
babies. And so I was starting to tell you before that, and I'm going to lead up to how I got to my work. I was reading all these books that I got out of the library when I was 10 about sibling rivalry, because I knew my mother's going to have a baby. I'm 10 years old. I already knew my stepfather hated me. My father was off having a different life. He was an artist. He was courting another beautiful woman. And I thought, I'm going to be jealous of this baby. And jealousy, I know, is a bad thing to feel. So I'm reading all these books. And also, I can't remember the name of the doctor who wrote all these books about taking care of babies. Dr. Spock, that was his name. So I come home and I'm reading, and I'm so afraid of having a negative feeling about this child. And finally, my mother has the baby. She almost died having it. There's a lot of stories about that, too. Stephen, is he gone? No. Stephen, can you get it? And she goes to the hospital. In those days, they kept you for a week. There was a bassinet that had been mine in the living room. They come home from the hospital, and he's carrying this little baby whose face was all irritated. It was a difficult birth. And he puts the baby down like this in the bassinet. The baby's crying, and then it goes to sleep. And I'm looking at the thing. I remember looking at my mother, who's miserable. She lies down on the sofa. My stepfather says, "I'm going out. I don't know when I'll be back." And he leaves. And I'm like this, like, oh my God, what do I do? I knew she was breastfeeding. I had to read up on all these things, what it meant. My mother passes out. She was a very dramatic, Victorian, beautiful lady like this, on the sofa with the wrist over us against the forehead, the way Victorian ladies did. The baby starts to cry. I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do? So I wheeled the bassinet over next to the sofa. And then I thought, I have to pick the baby up. But I remember reading that you can break the neck of a baby unless you support the head. Have to be very careful. And I'm little and skinny, and I'm trying to get behind it. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember getting a big chair, an armchair, and turning it backwards against the sofa so the baby couldn't roll off. I got the baby up. Baby's crying and crying. I opened my mother's blouse and took out her breast and got the nipple in the baby's mouth. And I'm like, oh my God, I did this. Now what do I do? Baby could fall off. It could move. I don't know how active babies are. So I got pillows and put them all around. I sat there like, the whole time. I can still feel the pain and the worry about it. But I remember also thinking, jealousy? Forget that. This poor kid. Oh, and took care of him. That was the first one. Next year, the second one. The third year, she knew I wasn't very happy with that. I kept saying, are you pregnant again? And she lied, told me she was a tumor. So I said, well, you better go to the hospital because your tumor's getting bigger and bigger all the time. And I felt betrayed that she would lie to me, you know. So, okay, I'm playing the piano whenever my stepfather isn't there. I'm kept home from school to take care of these babies, which she totally neglected, always asleep the minute my stepfather left the house. And I'm good with children because they were sweet. I knew that they were needy of somebody responsible taking care of them. I learned to make formulas and do all kinds of things. Changing diapers, it was easy. Except I wasn't going to school with my learning, but I was smart enough that I could read up, and when I go back to school after 6 weeks being out, I always was up to the level of the others, till I went to the Catholic school, which had a much more severe requirement of students. You had to do a lot of reading and studying, and there was no time for me to do that. So the time goes by, and my father had a cousin who was an opera singer. And she said, you know, you're so talented, you're composing music, you're doing this, you need to go to Juilliard. And I know Madame Rosina Levine, the Russian woman who was the head of Juilliard. I'll get you an audition. So I went there, my mother came with the 3 babies, and I played my compositions, and Rosina Levine said to me, that's really amazing. How long have you been playing the piano? I said, about 14 years. And she said, well, I will give you a scholarship for the high school and for the college and the master's degree. About the doctorate, we'll wait and see if you're serious enough. But she said, can you tell me where is middle C? I couldn't read music. This is all by ear, everything. And I looked and I said, there, and I hit the right one. She said, good. Now, what's G major? You might as well ask me something in Chinese. I said, I don't know. She said, that's it. You can't be put in Juilliard now because you have to be on the level with your contemporaries. They all read music since they're 5, 6, 7 years old. But she said, here's the name of this woman in the Bronx, 4 blocks from where I lived at the Blind Institute. A Miss Toady gave piano lessons. She said, in 1 year, she'll bring you up to the level of everybody else. You come here, your scholarship, you're set for the rest of your school years. My mother, not so happy about this. Now I would be taken away from her and taking care of my sisters. I'd be practicing. My stepfather didn't want me playing the piano. And I think what happened, she called my father and said, she's a girl, she's going to get married, somebody will support her, she wasn't going to stay with the music, she doesn't need to do this, let's forget that. You're building a new house, you have a new marriage. All went down. Broke my heart, because that's what I wanted to be. Now I'm 15, and I think I made the first mature decision of my life. I knew it was too late. If I wasn't in that school then, all those kids, and I see it all the more now, it's terrible what's happening. There are too many musicians. Most of them are Chinese, and the school is full of all these people. Where are they going to go? Because people are not appreciating classical music. If you go to a concert and look over the heads of people, most of them have my color hair. The younger people, they want something else, and that's kind of sad. There are contradictions in that, but not enough to give you hope. And this is 1952, 53. So I thought, what else can I do? And my mother said, well, you'd be a good interior designer. You have a great color sense. See, my playing by ear and composition was all to do with color, like the music of Debussy, and feelings of things. I always had a delicate hand playing, and I thought, yeah, I could take this energy. I was also reading metaphysical books about energy and music and energy and color being all on the same level. If you read more about it, it's very interesting. And I thought, that's what I'll do. I'm going to take this talent that I have for playing the piano and move it into color and design. So when I was 18, my mother had forged a paper in the Bronx County Court where I was left $4,000 by the wonderful grand aunt that we lived with to go to college. My mother signed a paper and kept taking the money out because her husband wouldn't support. He didn't come up with the money. Sometimes we didn't eat supper. It was terrible. Poverty in New York City in the 40s and 50s, like we were in a war zone, we didn't need to have, because she would not ask somebody for money, her husband, to support her own children. So she took away a lot of this money that I had. I was left with $1,200 from the 4,000. 4,000 would have put me through Columbia University in that time. So I took 600 of it and got my teeth fixed, because she never took me to the dentist. The other 600, I went to the Trapphagen School of Design, which is like 1 year at NYU, and I studied interior design and architecture. And that's how I got into this profession. At the time, 1957, no jobs. I thought I was going to become some famous interior designer right away, but you learn fast. And I'm 19 years old, and I should have had more school, but no. I couldn't even get a job in a showroom folding fabrics up. I did illustrations for interior designers because I could paint and draw, but nothing serious. And then, and this is luck, I think, and in persons' lives, as I've observed, I think a lot of what happens to you is what you do with what you're given, and the other part is luck. And some people have no luck, some people have a little bit, and some people have a brilliant amount that overflows like a cornucopia. So my luck was that one Sunday, my father's oldest sister, Iona, came to the house for dinner, and she brought, this is 1957, the New York Times used to have classified, that was famous, classified lists for jobs. You just went down the list, you know, A, B, C to Z. And she said, there's an ad for a colorist. And I said, what's a colorist? She said, I don't know, but you have a color sense, and I know the agency. You go down there tomorrow morning and you tell them you're my niece. It was a bookkeeping agency. My aunt was a bookkeeper. So I thought, oh, I could do that. Take your portfolio and go down there and apply for the job. So I was up at 6 in the morning, my only dress-up outfit, charcoal gray suit, an ivory shirt, a little straw hat, and white gloves, because the lady never went out. The lady never went out of the house without a hat and gloves.
Yeah.
57. So I go down on the subway with my portfolio. Portfolio was junk. It never showed anybody that I should be hired by them, that I could earn them money doing this, that, or the other thing. It was one bowl of fruit, some flowers, a little design of this. It was all mishmash and architectural drawing. And I didn't know what a colorist was. And here's what was strange. It's a tiny little studio with 3 little old ladies running it. They probably were a lot younger than I am now, but they seem to be ancient. And they didn't have the sense to take the 3 people applying for the job out of the room and just interview the one. So I'm sitting there, and the first one, I wonder what happened to her. Miss Brown, who was black, a graduate of Pratt Institute, a superb art school in Brooklyn. She opens a portfolio, and it's full of these marvelous paisley designs that look like Persian miniatures with little detail and dots and things and colors. And I'm thinking, oh, this is wonderful. And then I also thought, what's in my portfolio? I should get up and leave now before I make a damn fool out of myself. But then I thought, no, character and upbringing, you start something, you see it through to the end, you have to stay. So they look at the woman's, she's a young girl, she's about 22, 23 years old. Unusual at that time for a black person to have that kind of an education, I thought, and marvelous. They said to her, Miss Brown, I'm sorry you're not qualified for the job, but we'll stay in touch with you. Leave your papers here, and we'll call you if there's ever something. She said, yeah, and laughed. And I thought, yikes, I should go with her. Second one, Miss Rosenblum. She opens up, graduate of Cooper Union. Gorgeous portfolio, all flowers, all in repeat. I didn't even know what a repeat was. And colorways to go with it and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is overwhelming. But again, I thought, I should just leave because I'm going to make such a fool out of myself, I'll start to cry. But then I thought, no, if I go home and tell my father I left because he's going to say, you should have stayed there. She's told the same thing, not eligible, she leaves. They look at my portfolio, and I will say for them they were kind. They could have said, what are you, crazy? What kind of job are you expecting to get with this? Instead, they said, it's a very sweet portfolio, the word sweet, which I hated. But you're not qualified for the job. And I said, I assumed such. And they said, well, Miss Samuels, we'll call you if ever we have something that we think you're suited for. So being a proper young lady, I said, well, thank you very much, but by the way, my name isn't Samuels. They said, no, and they looked. I didn't say the thing, my aunt comes here or anything like that. I thought, I'm not doing that. I just wrote down my name. All people do is see S-A-M and they make up the rest. I said, my name is Samios. What is that? I repeat it. Well, you're not, they didn't dare say you're not Jewish, but that's what they meant. And the next thing, why don't we just send you up to Old Deerfield Fabrics? You never know. Maybe you'd suit. I thought, me? You sent away two incredibly gifted people you're sending me? And they give you the address. And I thought, if I had a good character, I wouldn't go because it's wrong. The other two people should have gone for this, and I shouldn't be doing it. On the other hand, I've been looking for a job for 9 months. I have no money. My father's tired of supporting me. I'm almost 20 years old. So I said, I'll just go up. Nothing will happen. So I go walk from 42nd to 57th Street to the Hamaka building where the office was. And the design director comes out. They called them stylists then. This woman to me was ancient, about 32 years old. A beautiful face with a big crescent scar here, which I thought, how do you get a scar like that? Dueling, right? Wow. Somebody goes, so. And she had a pillbox pink hat with a big chiffon scarf, pink suit, high heels. Even in those days, they wore them like this. And she looks like a movie star. She looked like somebody named Barbara Britton that was on television a lot. And I'm thinking, wow, because in those days, those women that had those jobs kept a hat on all day long. And then I thought, that must be hot, today. She looks at my portfolio. She looks at me. She says, well, my dear, you're very sweet, but how can I tell if you have a color sense? And I replied stupidly, my mother says I do. So she looks at me. I thought, like an idiot, what a thing to say. So she says, all right, well, Mr. Hardy, the president of the company, is in Europe for the next 6 weeks on a trip. When he comes back, I'll tell him about you. We need another colorist. Do you know what a colorist is? And I said, no. She said, we'd work it out, but we'll see. We'll call you in the next 6 weeks. So I left. I went home. I told my father. He said, good for you. You didn't leave. You saw it through to the end. I said, but I'll probably never hear from them. You know that. He said, I know, but I'm proud of you that you did the whole exercise. 6 weeks later, this woman, Betty Klaus, calls me up. We'd like to offer you the job for $49 a week, which, by the way, I made for the next 5 years. I learned on the job. Completely autodidactic in everything I did. It just came out of me learning and watching. And the second day I was there, they took me to the print mill in New Jersey, and it was like, everything's going around, the fabric's going around, and big machines, and they're talking a language I can't understand. And they said, did you get it? Did you get it? I didn't know what I had. Anyway, that's how I started my career.
That's amazing.
It was just lucky enough to be there at the right time, and these women didn't know what to do with me, I guess. I wasn't black and I wasn't Jewish, and apparently Mr. Hardy, C.D. Hardy, had said, don't send this and don't send that. It's horrible.
Oh, that's why they
And I always wonder what happened to those two talented people.
Yeah.
So from there, and it was an upper end, because the textile business has low end, middle end, and high end. The highest was Brunschwig and Fies. I never even looked at their stuff for years. But when I was in my middle 30s, on my birthday, I worked with this man who painted the picture there with the white flowers and also the mangoes with the red background, and also some of the pictures behind me on the wall on the right side of the bookcase here. John Jacoby. His son comes to the salon. You've seen him, the tall, bald-headed guy with the big mustache. He has a crescent moon pin on his lapel. Rick Jacoby. He's now about almost 79 years old, but I've known him since he was 11. Anyway, I got this job. I stayed there, and I moved, and after 3 months, the woman with the pink hat got fired, and I figured she's going, I'm next, but they kept me there. And John Jacoby came on, and he said, you're all on trial for 6 months. And under him, I just opened up. My color sense that I really didn't know I had, we won awards for some of the colors, and I kept going. Every time he changed jobs, I followed him. His paintings are all over here. And he was just a special, special kind of person. I knew his family, and we became friends. I worked with him for 20 years. Every place he moved, I went with him. He didn't do that. That's Mykonos, done by a Mexican painter. It was in my husband's apartment, and when he passed away, I kept it. I liked the Black Moon and the Mykonos harbor. Anyway, that's how I started my career.
And you fell in love with that.
Well, it earned me enough money that I could support my mother and 3 sisters, because my stepfather had disappeared.
Them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right up until my mother passed away in 1999.
It's amazing that you started with a piano play and you live in the piano factory. How did this happen?
That's a miracle, too.
I know, right?
Okay, here's this story. 1981. I have my job at Brunschwig, but it's a prestigious job. And prestigious jobs, as you probably know, pay very poorly. You're supposed to either have rich parents or a rich husband, and you're there because it's fun to work in this place. Brunschwig and Fies was the most elegant French company in the world. It was the highest position you could get in textiles. I didn't even really want to go there when I found out about it. It was working with John Jacoby. We worked at a place called the Downtown Brunschwig. Really, it was called Cyrus Clark Company. And I worked with him for years and loved working with him because we had this great creative rapport. I knew his wife and his son, and we did things together. And I just loved the family, and it was never any kind of a romantic thing at all, because I'm very old-fashioned about that and married people. And besides that, he was worlds away at 16 years older than I, but our friendship was golden and our creative collaboration. So he comes back from lunch uptown with the beautiful people. We worked on 29th Street and 5th Avenue. And he said, I just had lunch with Murray Douglas. This is a woman named after her Scottish uncle, who was the vice president of design of Brunschwig. They're looking for a design director. And I told them about you. You have to call them up this week and get an interview. They're expecting you to call. Now, he said, only because I'm a masochist, it's your birthday, and I had too much to drink. Am I doing this because I want to keep you with me? But you have to do it. And he was like the smart parent who finally cuts the apron strings of the child so they can be free and grow. But I didn't want to do it. I had heard stories about old lady Mrs. B, Mrs. Brunschwig. She was a harridan. That's a word you hardly ever hear or use. It's like somebody horrible who loves to verbally abuse people and do everything mean and nasty. She was awful. And people that worked there came home crying every night. And I thought, I was alone. I was divorced by then. I didn't have anybody's shoulder to cry on. I'm not going to call them. And then John Jacoby said to me, did you call? They're expecting you. If you don't call, I'm going to call. So I went up for an interview. First thing, they only had women in this department. Second thing, you couldn't wear pants. My friend who worked there already was gay, and she only wore pants, but they looked the other way just for her. Nobody else was allowed to wear them, and I show up in a pantsuit because I didn't know this. They interview me. I look at Murray Douglas. She's wearing a cheap acetate dress that came from Talbert's, nothing interesting like you're wearing. And I thought, And the other woman there was from the South. I have a thing about American Southerners. I find them, this is very prejudiced of me, but all the ones I've encountered have been rather insincere. And that statement about Southern women being an iron hand and a velvet glove and hello, darling, I love you, and all this kind of stuff, but underneath is like a knife. This was this woman, and she eventually got me out of there after 15 years. But anyway, I met them, and I thought, not my kind of people. And then they said, now you have to go meet Mrs. B. Mrs. B, famous old lady, she was widowed, running the company, but already losing her wits a bit. And she would insult people in the showroom, and she had all these decorators, most of whom were Jewish and brought millions of dollars to them. And she hated Jewish people, hated girls in miniskirts. Her thing, hated music. One day I had Mozart symphony on. She kept, get that noise off now. She always had a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. And she was horrible, 4'10", maybe 4'9", bow-legged, walking with a cane. And they told me when, after she met me, she said, well, do you always wear pants? You can't wear pants with me. And do you speak French? I said, unfortunately, I don't, but I do speak Ravel, Debussy, and Eric Satie, meaning all these composers. That's beautiful music, a bigger language than the one we speak. She said, that's disgusting. And I thought, oh boy, I don't want to work here. All of them seemed pretentious and snobby and waspy. And what kind of a name is Samios, anyway? I said, it's Greek. Ugh! I didn't say I was part French. I might have been accepted. It was just an atmosphere of prejudiced, narrow-minded, smart alecky people that turned me off. So I go back to my job, and I told Jacoby I went there. I don't like it. He said, Corinne, it's a big chance. It's the top position in the world in textiles. You need to take it. But I wasn't convinced. And they wrote me a letter, and the letter didn't get to me. I don't know how. It was one of those crazy things with the mail. And then they called me up and said, please, we want to hire you. So finally, a friend of my mother's, a lovely friend that passed away, grieving over the boyfriend that left him. But he was such a good guy. He talked to me on the phone for an hour and a half one night, and did something that a real friend would do. If somebody holds up a mirror to you and shows you, look in this mirror, this is who you are, you're being a coward, and you see it, if you have any integrity, you have to overcome that. And that's what he did, and I overcame my fear. I knew I had to make this move, whether I liked it or not, because I had to grow, and I'm about going forward and growing in life. So I took the job. And it was hard. I mean, the first week, I had such a hard time there, because that old lady would come in and she'd say, oh, you have no talent, no color sense, nothing, blah, blah, blah. And one time she came, and I'm sitting in a little cul-de-sac with my drawing table, and she took her cigarette out, and she's deliberately leaning over, and finally she burns a hole in my sweater. And I thought, I can't believe this is really happening. This woman owns this big company, and she's renowned all over the world for the designs. She was brilliant as a businesswoman, but she was one who enjoyed being evil with people, hurtfully. Claudette Colbert, famous movie star of the 30s, 40s, came in one day, and she said to her, you look stupid, and you should get a new hairdresser. I'm surprised they ever kept you in Hollywood. You're ugly. And then Lauren Bacall, the woman who was married to Humphrey Bogart, came in. It was summertime, and I had made a special design for her dressing room of rosebuds, and she came to check the colors and see if she liked it. So we're sitting there, 4 of us in a row in the drawing tables, and she's blonde, and you know what Lauren Bacall looked like, and we saw her in all the 40s movies. And I always thought she was very skinny, but in fact, some women have a fold of flesh here that's unfortunate, that makes them look like they have big wide hips. And she had beautiful khaki pants on and a fantastic, I'm sure it cost $1,000 even then, white linen blouse. And she's standing looking at it. An old lady comes in with the cane and whacks her on the side and says, "Huh, huh, what did they do with that in the movies? They covered it up. We all thought you were skinny, but you have ugly chihuahuas on the side of your legs." And I saw Lauren Bacall's face get all red and her eyes filled with tears. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how could she talk to somebody that's about to give her a $5,000 special assignment? But this is what one saw there. I survived it because one of my most neurotic qualities, a therapist once told me, is my ability to put up with untenable behavior. And it's true. It's because I think I grew up in a house where my stepfather was a monster, and my mother said to me, "Don't make trouble for me. You have to acquiesce. You have to accept." And I wanted to say, "Yeah," to him, like the time he threw all the French fried potatoes all over her because they were frozen in the middle and she didn't leave them in the oven long enough. He was just a stupid, primitive guy that should never have been with her. In 1967, I finally moved out of my father's house. I lived with him for 9 years. I think I was trying to make up for not having a time with him. And he was a great guy. He wasn't a great father, but he was an interesting, wonderful man, a good painter. And he was kind. And he was practical. He was the most pragmatic person I ever met. He taught me a lot of smart things. Like yesterday, I had to go to the dentist for tooth cleaning. And I'm thinking, what else can I do on the east side? Because I'm going to 52nd Street, and I took a broken lamp. And I feel good about that. He taught me that. If you're going in this direction, think what else you can accomplish that way. So I moved to 56th Street. Between Madison and Park, a 4-floor walk-up, a floor through with 2 fireplaces with my first husband, and it was a wreck. We spent about 18 months fixing the place up, and we made it wonderful. That's where I got those chairs and this coffee table and the wicker sofa over there where you left your coats and stuff. And I lived
you
there
said it was a rent control.
Rent control.
Which was how much in those times?
Get
'Cause
this,
I love that.
$115 a month rent. Otherwise, I couldn't have lived in New York that long. But we worked. I even scraped the floor myself with those big machines. I don't know how I managed it because I was a skinny little thing. Now I don't have to be that skinny now. I'd be so happy. And in 1981, I had been working in the Louvre in Paris. I went to Paris a lot. I could show you my journals. I should do that too.
Yes.
And I have several from Brunschwig and some other ones too. But they're good because they were the collections that I did.
We can do now. If you want.
I'll bring them over. Something like this. I think this is sort of the way they were done. And there are others too. But these are all the Brunschwig ones.
So they were like at the Brunschwig. They were you were designing the fabric, like
Fabric and wallpaper.
For
For the designers, only could buy these through architects and designers. Yeah, it was very exclusive.
Is it still?
No, they went into bankruptcy and they deserved to. About 10 years ago, and Kravat bought them, like they have a lot of English companies. But it's not the same anymore. That's the very first one I did at the Brighton Pavilion. Is there anything that you need to drink?
No.
No, okay. He's going to come in 2 minutes, he says, but that's Stephen.
Your colors are really amazing, like from the first one.
Oh, it was so much fun to go there. See, I was a
This
journal
is
keeper. I have a
so
whole
beautiful.
huge box full of journals of my life going back to the 70s, 80s. Yeah, all these are fabrics, which another time I could open up some. I have a trunk upstairs and one down here with fabrics. They're wallpapers and textiles, but they got more, the books got more sophisticated every time I did another one.
What is this from?
This is the Brighton Pavilion that George IV built in Brighton, England, using the money of his subjects. He was very criticized. His father was George III, who was crazy. And they were just quick ideas. I had 1 week to sit there. And it
Do you
was...
think because of your, did you get that sense of color from your dad, maybe?
No, he didn't have a great sense of color. My mother had a better sense of color. Maybe it was a combination of both of them, and it was the thing with the music. Again, I felt like I was drawing on. In fact, when I color and it's something good,
So
I
was
don't feel like it's
flowers
me. I
very
feel like
popular?
I'm a channel that things just come through. It's not me. I don't. It's the
Yes.
same when I played the piano. When it
Yes.
was good, it wasn't Corinne's playing the piano. I'm just sitting there allowing myself to be the channel. I think that's how the gift came early.
Wow.
I think it is because the ego has to get out of the way. So I never felt a sense of I'm special because I do this. I always know it was a gift to be allowed for it to come through me. But the music, going back to your first question, is what I really, really wanted to do. And that's why the salons. I heard about David Duvall on WQXR, the classical music station. When my husband, who had Alzheimer's, I married him knowing he had dementia. It was a loving caregiver relationship, not a marriage.
How old were you?
67.
And that's when you started doing solos?
No,
or
I
what
didn't
what-
start it then, but about 2 or 3 years later, after he had a stroke and he couldn't spend any time here, he had to be in a hospital bed. He kept his apartment when we got married. We'd known each other since 1965, but he was married to somebody else, as was I. I never thought of him as a boyfriend or anything because he was married. Then in 1988, when I got fired and divorced on the same day, yeah, I would love to see my horoscope for that day. It would say, stay in bed, don't get up.
No, but maybe it was good for
It was in the long run, but it was very treacherous about Brunschwig because 2 weeks before, because they made me take a vacation I never took, they said, you have to take 2 weeks off because we owe you 8 weeks of vacation because there was never time to go away. And then when I came back that next day, we were all going off to Paris together. They fired me. And what they said was, you need a change and we need a change. You're fired immediately. But it was this alcoholic other woman from the South who was working on them and saying rotten things. And it was also my ex-husband, Vincent, who wrote them letters saying that I said terrible things about them and all this stuff. He wrote to clients all over the world that I knew and bad-mouthed me terribly. He was a horrible, worst thing that ever happened to me in my life was to marry him. But November 1st, 1988, I go into work and I'm called into the office and I'm fired, and that's the day I'm going to court to get rid of Vincent, whom I supported for 4 years. He lost his job and just sat home playing games on a computer.
When I'm looking at those, like I have no knowledge in design or fabric or art like this, but I don't know, but I get a lot of emotions because of this color. They are so beautiful. What were you feeling when you were like, how do you feel when you create something like
Well,
that?
again, I was in that
Yes.
mode of things coming through me.
Right.
And fascinated that George IV had this crazy taste, like the pleasure dome of Kubla Khan. It was not British at all. It incorporated Chinese and Indian. These are real pictures of the interiors. And I was fascinated by it. And also, I kept hearing piano music. And it was Mendelssohn I recognized. And I asked the guard, where's the music? He said, there's no music here. No music at all. I said, but I hear it. Oh, he said, that's the ghost.
Do you think that you were a witch before, like in your previous
It has been
life?
said
Yeah.
to me.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh, I have to tell you a funny story about things like that. Many years ago,
He has questions.
Cannot read.
years and years ago, I guess back in the 80s, a friend of mine that I hired out of the Chicago Art Institute to work with me at Brunschwig gave me a birthday gift of a Qigong therapist who was on 79th Street across from the planetarium. So I went up 10th Avenue on the bus, and then I took the crosstown 79th Street bus. And it's a cold February day. I see a woman, maybe in her 40s, skipping along, and it's about 10 degrees out with a lollipop, like, la, 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 la. And I thought, is cuckoo? And I thought, no, it's a real person enjoying themselves. And the bus went on up to the corner of Central Park. I get off, I cross the street north, and walk back half a block to the building I was supposed to go to for my massage. I ring the bell, and it's the woman with the lollipop that answers the door. And I thought, oh.
That was you.
Yeah. So I didn't say anything, but she said, sit in the waiting room and, take off your coat. I'm with somebody, and you'll be next. So 15, 20 minutes go by, and then she calls me in, and I'm thinking, I'm going to find out about this woman. It's kind of strange. And she tells, take all your clothes off but your bra and your pants and lie on this bed or whatever, table. So I do that. I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm going to do this with this lady with the lollipop. So I lie down, and she sits on my back, and she says, I recognized you immediately when you came in. And I said, really? You could see me on the bus? I said, I recognized you too. She said, oh, that's good. Now we know who we are. So something I felt wasn't in alignment. So I said, I saw you coming across on the 79th Street bus. Oh, not that, she says. I mean, we're from Andromeda. And I thought, oh, and here I am in my underwear. It's 10 degrees out, so I can't exactly jump into my clothes or put my coat on and run outside. And she's saying this, and she says, yes, don't you remember that we were sent here? You're sent here to this planet to raise the level of the society. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, again, I'm in my bra and pants. What am I going to do? And she goes on and on and on. And then she was very sweet and nice. And she said, you realize that, don't you? And I said, I think maybe I forgot. So she says, all this stuff. And she's been giving me this great massage. And then she says, I've had a lot of strange experiences here, but I'm so happy to hook up with you again. Remember we used to sit up on this high hill and look out at the horizon and watch the sun and the moon and all that stuff? And I said, I wish I could remember that. It sounds beautiful, but I can't really remember it. And she said, oh, so many wonderful things. And then I came here, and she said, I was married, and I had a son here. But we got divorced, and my son was home about 2 months ago. And, I was driving downtown in a taxi cab with my boyfriend. And you know what? I grew a penis. And then I thought, I have to get out of here. And I said, this is very typical of me. I just, really? What else do you say if some woman tells you this? And she said, yes, I had slacks on, and I was holding my boyfriend's hand, and I felt something moving in my pants, and I put my other hand down, and I had a penis. Okay. And I thought, I gotta get out of here. She's nuts. And I said, what an experience. And I said, and what's become of all this? And she said, oh, it dried up and fell off. And I thought, I'm not coming back here. But that was my experience when she said, oh, we're from Andromeda. So I told that to Stephen when we first met, and we were having these marathons on the phone all night long. And he said, where are you from? And I said, well, I tell most people the Bronx, but I'll tell you I'm really from Andromeda. And he never forgets it. Every once in a while he'll tell somebody, this is Corinne, she's from Andromeda. And they,
Well, I don't remember you from there, but
no, I know. Who knows? We've all been everywhere. We're all souls.
That's, yeah. All right, we are going to how you found the piano factory.
Yes. So I'm sorry. See what I mean? I diverge, go down roads. So I come back from this trip in Europe for about 3 weeks, and there's a letter in the mailbox. The building has been sold to the Black Rock Company, which I thought immediately Rockefeller, and it was one of their divisions. Big realty company. They bought up the whole block of brownstones. They're going to tear it down to put up a big IBM building. You have 3 months to get out. Oh, my heart sank. I was stunned because I didn't have extra money to do everything. I was still living, paying for mother, the 2 other sisters, all this stuff. I'm devastated. And I just sat down. I didn't even cry. I just felt, what the hell am I going to do? And I had a friend who knew a lawyer. It's a whole long story, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but the lawyer came to see me, and he liked me, and he wanted me to do certain things. He said, I'll get you some money. They have to give you money to leave. You can't just throw you out because you're rent control. But the lawyer turned out to like me, and he had a wife and 2 children. But the wife, get this, she takes me out to lunch, and she says, my husband likes you a lot. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I have nothing to be guilty of. I don't care about what your husband. He says, no, don't worry about that.
like you too.
Glad. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So she says,
Oh gosh.
I want a sabbatical from the marriage for 2 years. I said, what? I never heard of this. She said, I'm fed up with Charlie. I'm bored. I want him to set me up in an apartment on Central Park South. He was an expensive lawyer. And I want him to keep the 2 daughters. They were 11 and 13. I don't want to hear anything about them for 2 years. Even if they're sick, don't call me. I want my jewelry. I want my clothes. I want my servants. And I want to live there. I can do whatever I want, go out with, sleep with whomever I want. After 2 years, if I'm not happy doing that, I'll come back. But in the meanwhile, you can live with him. I mean, my mouth just kept going. I couldn't eat the lunch. I was like, what?
Wow.
So I said,
what an open-minded.
Very. But I said, the trouble is, you got the wrong girl. I'm not for that. I can't do that. And she said, well, we want to use you anyway. And she made the mistake of saying use.
Yeah.
They wanted me to take care of the daughter. She said, you're very motherly. You brought up your sisters. We know you look after them. And I'm thinking, holy cow. And your talent, quit Brunschwig. You'll work with us in a mill. We wanted to do a print mill. And with my name, she was a decorator, and your talent, we'll make a lot of money. And I thought, yeah, you and Charlie will make a lot of money. And in 2 years, they'll probably say bye. So that was the end of him. Then I got another lawyer named Ted Malatesta, a lovely name in Italian. It means headache. It sounds like something else, but
Yes.
so I asked him one day, what can I do? They're going to throw me out of the building in another month. He said, give me the case. It's a piece of cake. I'll take care of you. And he did. But in the meanwhile, side story, psychic mother, talking to her, and I was crying. And I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know where I'm going to live. I ended up in Central Park with my piano. I had the piano and this table and those 2 chairs and the dining room table and the sofa and my brass bed. That's all I had. So my mother says, just be quiet for a minute and I'll tell you what's going to happen. So I'm quiet. And she says, okay, I see you in one big room. And she says, there are lots of windows, maybe 6 windows. And she said, and you have books, and you have your piano, and your sofa, and everything else. She said, the odd thing is, though, it's just this one big room. You have a little kitchen, and then you have a separate bedroom with your bed in it and some other things. But she said, you're lucky you have such cohesive taste because everything goes together. Because before I had a separate dining room and separate everything, and now it all sits together and it works together because it does. So it's the cohesive taste that I think I do have. So she says, and you have a sofa in the back of the room in front of a bookcase, and there's a table behind the sofa, and you have a lamp on the table. There's where I made a mistake. I said, oh, Mother, nobody decorates like that. That's 1940s. You don't put a lamp on a table behind a sofa. She said, very well, you don't want to hear anything. I'm not telling you anything more. And she just closed me off. And then I call up a man. I was in a robbery. One of my first times. I've been mugged 8 times, but not in recent years. And mostly when I lived on the east side, strangely enough, for this neighborhood. So I got a freelance job at a building right next door to where I lived on 56th Street. It was an old decorating firm. And I was in there for the first time. I had $40 left to my name. Not enough to send my mother or to eat. And I bought lilacs because I'm a romantic. They were then $1 a bunch, so I bought 2. That left me with $38. I walked past my home, and I thought I should run upstairs and put them in water, but then I'll be late for the appointment for a freelance job. So I better just go up. I'll take the lilacs with me. So I go up, And we're sitting there, and the woman likes me a lot. I'm showing her all of my designs. And a very handsome black man in a Correggio suit comes in, and he says, "Ladies, this is a holdup. Everybody in the back room." So I think he's kidding because he's so well dressed and so handsome. He looks like a TV commentator. So I just smile. The woman who's interviewing me, I noticed, had a huge diamond ring like an ice cube, and she went, and she comes with a finger like this, and I thought, why is she giving me the finger? I thought she liked me. And the guy sees it, and he comes right, spit it out. And she spit it out. And then I realized, oh my God, it's a holdup. I had a little Zelotes lion ring that somebody gave me, and I had a hole in the lining of my pocket that I kept thinking, you should sew it, you should sew it, you keep forgetting. And I pushed it off, so they didn't get that. But they shoved us in a room. There's Carlton Varney, 6'6", with a long pink scarf. He had a wife, but he was gay to cover up because that's what people did in that time still. And there's two guys now. The other guy isn't handsome and well-dressed. He looks like a thug. He looks like somebody mug you on the street. And he says, into the room. So there's myself, the lady who's interviewing me, Carlton Varney, big tall guy with the pink scarf, and another woman who's like a business person. We're shoved in this little room, and they're out, and they're breaking everything. I'm thinking, my bag, got my bag with my address. I live next door. The keys are there. But then I think there's no money, but they might go and steal my radio or whatever. We hear bang, crash. They're breaking these glass partitions between the desks, and they're wrecking the place, and we're all scared. So Carlton Varney pushes me in front of the door, and he tells the other woman, call 911, get the police fast. But they hear this. Somebody has put tape over the latch in the door so it doesn't stay closed. And they push the door open. I'm the one in front of the door like this, with the guy behind me. And they say, okay, smart ass, you have all the big ideas. And the nasty one pulls out a gun. He pushes it up, I'll never forget this, up against my forehead like this, and he cocks the revolver. And he said, you're going to get it first because you have all the big ideas. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I came here to earn money, to pay my bills. Now I'm going to die. And they tell you your life goes in front of you when you're going to die. I didn't think that, but I thought I'll never eat strawberries or see a sunset or my parents again or listen to Debussy or Chopin. You know, I'm thinking all these things will never happen again. Nobody knows I'm there because it's a freelance job while I'm still working somewhere else. And that night, I'm supposed to chaperone my mother at the Museum of Modern Art Garden. She has a blind date with an Albanian poet. And my boyfriend that I had at the time is Greek, and the Albanians and Greeks often speak the same language or understand each other. So he's going to come, and I'm supposed to pick him up. And instead, we get pushed in the room, and the gun is here. And then something weird happened. It's only happened to me a couple of times in my life like this, where you don't remember what you do, because I always remember everything. The next day, because we survived, shut off. The woman who was going to hire me called me up and said, you saved our lives yesterday. The guy had the gun, and you told him, please don't kill us. This man, who was very flagrantly gay, but they didn't notice this, he has 3 sons. Don't leave them without a father, please. We won't do anything. Take whatever you want. I'll keep everybody quiet. You go when you go. Please don't kill us. We all have family to take care of. You don't want that on your soul. And he listened. And they locked us up in the kitchen. And I took all the remaining jewelry from everybody and put them in a pot of coffee because it was dark. You can't see into the coffee pot, and saved the rest of their jewelry. But I talked to him and said all these things. I have no memory of it.
Yeah.
And then
Blank.
they finally stopped banging around. It was quiet, and we pushed the door open. I'm there, and I met this man who was the vice president of this company. And he had left the company, and he was down here at Manhattan Plaza as the manager. I'm trying to remember his name, because if I remember it, you might know it since you go there. Anyway, I called him up when I got the letter, and I said, what do? I have 3 months to get out. Is there any place in Manhattan Plaza that you could get me in? He said, the waiting list is all actors, dancers, 3-year waiting list. You never get in. But he said, did you get the New York Times today? July 1st, 1981. This is, again, luck. I said, no, I don't buy the Times every day. He said, go down to the Drake Hotel, which was across the street, buy the Times. Read the article in the business section about the piano factory. Two guys that were in the Army together put their money together and bought this abandoned piano factory on 46th Street. You should go there and get in. That's where you should live. And the funny thing is, I didn't like this guy. I thought he was a warlock. He seemed to me like a male witch. There was something about him that I thought was funny. Maybe he was. So I go in to buy the paper. I get the address. I come over here. I walk in. I thought, oh, I could be happy here, but I didn't see this apartment. I also forgot to tell you, I had in the bag $350. That's it. No other money. My salary came in, went out to mother and the girls. I just paid the rent and the food, and that was it. He tells me this. I come over here. I love the place, but the apartment down there was $144,000.
Oh, they were for sale.
Co-ops.
Right.
And I have $350.
Oh, God.
Then I looked at the one next door, 136, also 2 bedrooms. Then I looked at several in this building and a couple in the south building. The better ones, I think, are in this building. And I said to the lawyer, you know, you're making me do this, go around, look at places, and I found this wonderful place. It's where I'd like to live. I never liked the east side. It's too pretentious and cold. West side, I'd like to live in the 70s, 80s, 90s, something like that, but too expensive. It's always been more expensive than the east side. I didn't know that. So lawyer says, just wait, just wait. And he kept getting them up with the money and getting them up. And the new lawyer who took it over got the $70,000 down payment for this apartment, but I never saw it. My sister and her husband were here one day. The reserve sign was off the door. I'm showing Karen the other apartment, and her husband walks in here and he comes running. I said, I see your apartment. It's great. There was nothing, no bookcase, no staircase, no loft upstairs with storage, just one big long room going back to the kitchen. And I thought, it looks like a bowling alley or a place for a ballerina to do arabesques from one end to the other. But I wouldn't want to live there. And my brother-in-law, who has no aesthetic taste, said, oh, you put up partitions, make a little room here, a little room there. But then you destroy what's wonderful here is this great expanse. So I told them I found this one, but it was $120,000. The lawyer said, just wait a few days and say your prayers. And he calls me up 2 weeks later. He got them to sell me this apartment for $111,000. He got the $70,000 down payment, and he said, you just pay up the rest as you go along. But I couldn't get a mortgage anywhere. This is where an interesting Greek thing comes in. My father wasn't rich, but he was very careful with his money, very careful. And he's married to a Nazi, a real Nazi who lived in World War II in Germany and loved every minute of it. And she was stupid. Her conversation would be, Dona, I washed 32 windows today, right, Dona? And if you said, yes, Helga, she'd say, right, Dona? And you had to say, right, Helga. And then she'd move it too. After I did the 32 windows, then I was vacuuming the whole place. Right, Corinne? And I said to my father, how do you stand this? How could you put up with it? So my father says, I will, after 3 banks said you pay too much money to your parents, you don't earn enough money to your mother. You can't have a mortgage from us. You won't be able to pay it back. My father says, I'll lend you $55,000, 35% interest.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's my father.
Did you agree?
I had to, because I had to. The floors had big holes in them from whatever machinery they used. This building was Wessel, Nickel, and Gross. You'll see the pictures down in the lobby. And that piano was built here, that's down there. They made the action for Kanabi, Chickering, and Steinway pianos. And here I had my Steinway, which I was paying off and paying off and paying off and paying off. But it came with me.
I have one more question that I was thinking to ask you, because I feel like I'm a New Yorker in heart, even though I've been here only 4 years.
Really? And your English is so super.
I lived in Connecticut for 11 years.
Where in Connecticut?
Richfield.
Okay.
We used to come here at least once a month. And I've been to a lot of states and a lot of beautiful cities like Boston, Washington, San Diego, San Francisco, this and that. but I never felt as happy as when I was coming in New York. So I knew that,
That's great.
you know what, when my kids are out of college, I don't have to pay for their school and I'm free, I'm going to move to New York because that's where I feel at home. So my question is, we'll be connected with New York. I want to know, like, how was New York when you were like young? And did you ever think about moving from here? Obviously not, because you're still here. And what is your sentiment about you, New York?
Big sentiment.
Yeah, I can tell.
Age of 2, going down Riverside Drive in my father's 1938 green Plymouth, sitting in a baby chair with my foot on the stick shift because it tickled my foot and I like that. And I saw all those beautiful Riverside Drive apartments as you go down the West Side Highway. And I said to my mother, what are those tall buildings? I'd never seen apartment buildings in the Bronx like that. She explained what an apartment was. And I said to her, when I grow up, I'm going to live in Manhattan and have an apartment in a building like that. And she said, why would you want to do that? We have a house in the Northeast Bronx. It was a nice neighborhood and full of trees. And I said, no, I want to live in New York. From 2 years old, all I could hope for was to live here. So at 15, when my stepfather decides to sell that house in the Bronx, and that was the end of any hope of music education, we moved to Kent, Connecticut, which is on the Housatonic North.
Yeah, beautiful.
Bought the old Chestnut Inn, which he thought was going to run a business, but he had no sense of business. It was the year after they built the New York State Thruway, so everybody went north on the Thruway, not on 7. So you didn't get customers stopping to eat. And I lived there for 3 years. It was beautiful, but I hated it. I came to New York every time.
Yeah.
Yes. No. And I kept waiting. Then I had no money, so I had to live with my father again. The Northeast Bronx, near the Hutchinson River Parkway and Boston Post Road. He built his own house because he was terribly creative. He built it between 1947 and about 3 years before he died in 1999. One time I went up to his house. I have his genes, I think. He was up on the roof. He was 88 years old. And I said to Helga, where's my father? She said, oh, he's up on the roof fixing the shingles. And I said, Baba, come down. What are you, crazy? You know, you're 88 years old. You're going to fall off the roof. He says, oh, stop. I'm going to fix it myself. If I hire somebody, they'll take advantage of me, take my money. I know how to fix it right. I'll be down in 10 minutes. And he came down. He was still dancing at 93.
You've been to Georgia.
No, I almost got to Georgia 2 years ago with David Aladashvili.
Okay.
He's the one that I started the salons with.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that.
David was at Juilliard. When I joined the classes, when my husband was stationed at his own apartment and was in bed, I thought, what am I going to do at night to keep myself from going crazy? Because I used to go every day to my husband's apartment, and the Alzheimer's group I was seeing said, you want to take care of your husband for the rest of his life? I said, of course. They said, you can't go but twice a week. I said, no, I love him, and you met John. He was wonderful and very funny. But they said, if you go more than twice a week, you will not outlive him. He'll outlive you. We have to show you all these lists. Caregivers go. So then I had more time to spend. And I was always worried about him, but I had to take care of the caregivers. He had 4 a week. It went through a lot of money, but it was it was his money. It was the right thing to do. And I married him, which we didn't go into, because I felt he was a very good friend to me. He helped me when my ex-husband left me with $65,000 in debts. As soon as we were going to get divorced, he went out and charged everything on all my accounts, and I kept paying just the basic covering for MasterCard and Visa and this, and it was like never ending on a treadmill. And John, I lost my last job because the man that I worked for sold the company, and the man that bought the company wanted his mistress in my position, so I got fired twice. So,
oh wow.
John said, how much do you owe? How much do you owe? I said, no, I'm not telling you because you're a scolder. He was another Leo. And he would say, how did you let this happen? Why could you do blah? So I said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to sell this apartment and have to go wherever I go. See, every night he'd come over and we'd make dinner together. And he'd say, tell me the truth. How much? How much? After 6 nights, he broke me down. I said, I know you're going to make me feel miserable. He said, I promise you, if you tell me, I won't say a word. So I said, okay, it's $65,000. He said, thank you very much. Went home a little while later. 2 days later, he comes over with a check for $65,000. He sold some stock for me to pay my debts.
It's so sweet.
So when he needed help.
Yes, of course, of course.
So I got to hear the radio program of David Duvall, and he says he has these classes 3 nights a week at Juilliard, where I was meant to go. And you don't have to do anything or play. You just go and sit there and hear world-class musicians. So I signed up, and it was lovely. I loved it immediately. And one night, David Aladashvili comes, and he's playing, and he was the best student, David Duvall said, that he ever had, the most talented. But I didn't talk to those people. I was just in a class of 30 people sitting and listening. I met Nico Namaradze when he was still at the end of high school, and David had been here about 8 years. He got a scholarship from Georgia, but he had been trained as a dancer before he became a pianist, which is interesting, why he's so graceful. There's a video of me dancing the tango with him that was great. So anyway, David announces at the class one time when I'm there, maybe 3 years, that he was giving a concert at the Church of Christ and St. Stephen on 69th Street on Sunday at 6 o'clock because one of his best friends, who was from Israel, had multiple myeloma, which is a horrible form of cancer. Israel, of all the countries in the world, has the highest rate of survival with the surgeries they do for that. But they charge, this is then, $55,000 and take no insurance. This is an actor, he has no money. So David wants to give this benefit concert, and would we come? Now that day, my sister-in-law had died, which is another crazy story, but I went to North Carolina to her funeral, and I discovered I had 4 lovely nieces and nephews who came up to me at different times and said, gee, you're nice. We thought you were horrible. My brother didn't like me, and his wife hated me. She was short and fat, and she was very jealous of me because I was thin and I had a career. And she fed them with all this poison about me, and suddenly they found me gentle and somebody to talk to. So I gained that. I flew home at 12 o'clock, fed the cats, changed my clothes, and got ready to go to this benefit concert. I get in a taxi, and the driver's Hispanic, and he's listening to WQXR, the classical station. So I said, do you mind if I ask, are you a musician? He said, no. I said, why do you ask? I said, because of this beautiful station. I have it on at home. I just left this. He said, oh, it's my segue from my work to home every day. It keeps me sane. I get quiet because the job makes me nuts. So I said, well, we talked about music, and he said, where are you going now? And I said, I'm going to this benefit concert. And I told him about David Aladashvili and his friend and the multiple myeloma, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, that's interesting. I wondered why you go to church at 6 o'clock on a Sunday. So he said, I know the church. We get right there. He stopped the car, and he locks the door so I can't get out. And I think, what's going to happen now? I look out the window, and I see David talking to a friend of mine from the class and another very pretty girl, the girlfriend that David had here, Marika. So the driver says, don't be afraid, just wait a minute. And I hear paper rattling. And he unlocks the door. He says, okay, you can get out. He hands me a $20 bill. He says, give this to him for his friend. And I thought, jeepers, there really are beautiful people around if you just keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
So I said to the driver, wait just a minute. Will you stay here just a minute? I run over to David. I said, you don't know me. My name is Corinne. I'm in Dubal's class. That driver over there just gave you this money for your thing. Go and thank him. So David said, yes, yeah. He goes over and he thanks the driver, and the driver waves at me and drives away. Beautiful story, New York story. Then David comes back over, and my friend from the class is there. And she says to me, did you tell David who you are? I said, I'm Corinne Samios. He doesn't know my name. I'm in the class. She said, no, tell him who you are. I said, I
Who
just
you
did,
really
Ellen.
are.
I just told him who I am. So she says to David, she's a pianist that never got realized. I said, no, I'm not. I'm an amateur pianist. I did find a teacher when I was 19. She taught me to read some music. I can play Brahms intermezzi. And for a while, I practiced every day. For several years, I was really, really good. But then when I got the Brunschwig job, it was a man-eater job. Sometimes I was there 10, 11 o'clock at night and couldn't come home and sit down and play. So David says, where do you live? And I tell him Hell's Kitchen. What kind of a place? An apartment? I don't know why he was asking me all this. I said, it's a loft, a small loft. He said, well, do you ever have salons there? So I wasn't sure he knew what a salon was. So I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, you know what a salon is? And I said, no, I don't. So he tells me. And I said, oh, I couldn't afford to do that. I don't earn enough money. He said, no, a salon, you provide the venue. If you can afford it, some wine, but never red, always white because people spill it, and something to eat, maybe something simple. I got very elaborate. And
You
he
did.
said,
It was wonderful.
you come at Christmas, it's going to be good too. We'll talk about that later. So he says, could I come down with my girlfriend and see the loft on Sunday? He said, you don't have to pay anything. You provide the venue, and there's a basket, and people donate money. He said it's an old-fashioned, hundreds of year custom in Europe. So I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great? It would be my way of giving back to some world that I meant to be part of but didn't get to be. And that's how it started. I had a lot of fun of him. People said to me, is he your toy boy? Because he was, what, 22? And I'm 70-something. And he's tall and handsome, and I'm this little lady. But we had fun together. I paid dinner, so I took him out to dinner because it was a wonderful thing for me on the other side of taking care of John and being the best caregiver I could be for him, because I never wanted him to be what my sister did to my mother in a nursing home. You kill people when you do that. They just descend quickly.
Yes.
And so he stayed in his own apartment. And
How long?
oh, he had Alzheimer's for 19 years, but I was married to him for 14 years. 14 years I took care of him. And we got finally musicians there, and my lovely friend here came over and took pictures of us. There's still one on the piano of him. It was Valentine's Day. And he was sitting there I gave him a pillow that said, I love you or something, and he liked it.
Will you play for us a little?
No, I can't. I mean, where's the Prosecco?
You have to be drunk?
Yeah.
Your 3 favorite buildings in New York that always fascinates you?
And always will, because from my childhood, I love the Empire State Building. And that's where we met. Like Sleepless in Seattle and the movie made before that and the movie made before that, that's where we decided we'd actually physically meet. So that's one of my favorites. I have more than 3, but if I had to narrow it down.
Go ahead.
The Chrysler Building. That's
Chrysler Building?
Yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah. I maybe like that as a building more than the Empire State Building. Empire State Building would be the second favorite. I like the RCA building, which it's now called the Rock Tower, or I don't know what it's called.
What is RCA building? Where is
Radio City Music Hall.
Oh, right.
With the ice skating rink below. Because I had a lovely time when I was 15.
Plaza.
Rockefeller Plaza.
Rockefeller. Okay.
I like this building a lot.
Okay.
There's a wooden house on 53rd Street on the east side that I like a lot. Somebody lived there, but maybe more than 150 years. It's between 2nd and 3rd. I like the Dakota. I like the Ansonia Hotel on Broadway between 73rd and 74th Street. I didn't have much social life with my first husband. And he always went to sleep at 7 o'clock every night.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
no
God, big
New
time.
York nightlife?
Then when I moved to New York, I started entertaining. Once my apartment got put together, I did a lot of dinner parties and started cooking. That was my favorite thing, I think. Or going to concerts. I love classical music. I love all kinds of music.
What do you like to cook?
Okay, I love to bake. I'm a good baker. I make mostly Greek, Italian, some French, but it's more Greek, Turkish, Middle Eastern food. Or what I like to describe, I thought of it the other day when somebody asked me the same question. I like elegant peasant food. I do not like Julia Child, over the top French, do this, do that, and have 1,000 pots and stuff. I like simple food with special ingredients, the finest ingredients, and making wonderful things. So baking, I love to make salads. I make great fruit salads and green salads. My whole family loves them.
If you have to eat one food only, what will be that?
Good question. I would do a lot of consideration about it because there are a lot of things I love, but it would probably be apples.
Okay. Any childhood favorite meals? Like comfort food that you think of?
Yes. My mother used to make roast beef or roast leg of lamb with what my brother and I called gooey potatoes. She'd peel and cut up potatoes for roasting, and they'd be in the pan with all the juices from the meat or olive oil or butter or whatever was on it, and it would get crisp on the outside. I love potatoes.
I love potatoes. Me too. My favorite.
Yeah, I think maybe more than an apple, I'd like potatoes.
Yeah, I can eat potatoes any shape.
It's like somebody's hugging you from
Yeah.
inside.